Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinions on such issues. I am Ruth Osime.
And I am Majekodunmi-Oniru. Today's topic is political violence. We have special guests and a very informative show planned, so please stay tuned while we get started.
Welcome back here to Perspectives on Arise News. In Nigeria, electoral violence has become a worrisome phenomenon that has continued to rear its ugly head since Nigeria returned to civil rule in 1999. The violence usually becomes more pronounced before, during, and after the announcement of election results, with campaigning in many areas beset by political killings, burnings, and armed clashes between supporters of rival factions. Such mayhem hampers political stability and empowers politicians who use this channel to manipulate the electoral process before and during the polls. We can understand politicians verbally tearing each other apart. We can comprehend why they leave no stone unturned to damage their opponents' reputations and bring out all skeletons out of their cupboards, no matter how long it takes to dig them out. Some of the damages done to these politicians are beyond repair. Such is the game of politics. But the funny thing is that politicians make very strange bedfellows. Today they are sworn enemies. Tomorrow they are smiling together in public. No friends, no foe. But when lives are lost because of one man's dream, when the cost of human life becomes less valuable than the number of votes, then such politicking becomes a danger to society. Allegations and denial of politically sponsored violence have always been rife. And people have little or no faith that things will change in the electoral process taking place in Uyo, Kogi, and Bayelsa, respectively.
Thank you, co-host. Very well said. Physical torture, psychological terroristic actions, forced abductions, human trafficking, racial torture, mass rape. The depths of violence in politics are universally unfathomable. The quest for political power has led some of the most atrocious crimes in history. A powerful group can use political violence to weaken opposing groups, and opposing groups can use political violence to revolutionize change against a powerful group. Many electoral, ethno-religious, domestic, and international warfares have resulted in fatalities and casualties of thousands to millions of human lives. Political violence displaces families, depletes resources, destroys infrastructure, induces psychological turmoil, and erodes unity, peace, and progress. The consequences of historical political violence continuously vibrate across the world till this very second. World wars, wars for independence, civil wars, the Arab Spring, the Biafra War, the Russian War that wiped out over 5 million people, the Chinese War that wiped out over 10 million people, and World War II that wiped out upwards of 100 million people. Political violence is highly deadly. Aside major domestic and international war occurrences, political violence also occurs every day around us. Intraparty violence, assassination attempts, armed escalations, and snatching and destroying of ballot boxes. The cost of political violence is huge. No matter how small the event is, violence damages, regresses, and extincts. Great leaders take actions daily to build progressive grassroots power and not slaves for war. We can all be revolutionary pacifists. We can win without war. More will be discussed with our special guests very soon, but coming up right now is a unique report on political violence.
Every election cycle in Nigeria, one of the major talking points that always comes to mind is the case of electoral violence. Even with the sign of peace accords by the contestants before the polls take place, political thugs still engage in violence or voter intimidation. It's worrying that since democratic rule returned, Nigeria has experienced a degree of unprecedented political violence that has crippled the efforts of national development. Political violence has been identified as a common feature of the Nigerian political system.
They just burnt our votes. They just burnt our votes.
An analysis of the Nigerian political journey has shown that political violence has been part and parcel of the country's checkered history. The general elections that held in February witnessed pockets of violence in some parts of the country. With the off-cycle polls taking place this weekend in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi State, the preparation of the police force will be put to test to see how the force can limit or curtail any attempt to undermine the electoral process. Today on Perspectives, we will be taking a look at the effect of violence in politics, how security agencies around the country can play a part in providing solutions to this problem that has plagued our political system for decades.
Or otherwise.
You know, when you hear of this political violence, it's a bit discouraging because it doesn't even encourage you to want to go out to actually vote, because nobody wants to sacrifice their lives for something that they don't even think will count in the first place. So apart from even the violence, there's also the distrust of the outcome of results. So at the end of the day, voter apathy is at its strongest. And I really don't see whether, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, the only way that they can win the confidence of the people is the way they conduct this elections that is going on now. Whether all the rights, all the wrongs of before will now be done right. But
How
until
are they
then,
going to do it right when it's the very same system that has been doing it for over 20 years, the very same system that has not given us free and fair elections, the very same system that, as we have grown into evidential recordings, we can see the effect of regression, and how it's not, and how the elections are so blatantly violent, so unfree, and so unfair.
well, you can't throw the baby with the bathwater. This is what we are with now, and we keep hoping that there will be a change. We keep hoping that things will improve. We don't know how this off-season election would be. So based on what we see, then we now know whether or not they have kept to their promises of being more vigilant, of having more security. All of these are questions that people are at the tip of people's mouths.
Right.
And we don't know until we see what this result turns out like.
Right. I recall when I was campaigning for Senate, and a particular governor I had a meeting with said, "Are you ready to risk your life?" I was shot 3 times. I went through so much violence in order to be elected. Are you ready to go through that? Are you ready to go through health scares, health challenges? Are you ready to go through half a leg while you're fighting for justice, peace, greater Nigeria? It's like it's expected for that violence to be there, and they fight to the finish for that position.
Well, like I said, politics is not exactly a field that anybody would want to go into. I mean, it is so full of landmines, and it's not even encouraging to people who want to get into it. But the truth of the matter is, if we want our country to move forward, we have to have people who are boldly ready to take that plunge, and hopefully gradually as the years go by we will begin to sift out the bad eggs and hopefully have more that will crop up. And then I encourage younger and younger people to get into politics, because the truth of the matter is that if the same people have been ruling us for the past 60 years, it's not going to change.
But there are many people today who are ready to do any and everything it takes for greater Nigeria. They're hard at work, they're not scared of the violence, they are out there ready to exercise their human rights and make sure that we are progressive in actions, in deeds, and in words.
Well, there are many people who are ready to do that, but the truth of the matter is that how many of them are ready to risk their lives? How many of them are ready to... I mean, I have a friend who is running for governor, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm like, look, you've done so well in your life, you're very successful as a private person. Do you really, really want to get into this role that is almost like a thankless job? And then not only when you get inside, are you going to be able to manage the machinery? Are they not going to work against? So there's so many things that you have to weigh, and you have to see whether or not you are really prepared to do it.
Right.
But anyway,
1 in thousands, usually the effect is minimal. When you have millions ready for that change, for that push.
Well, we hope the change will finally come, and we hope that we'll have more people that can make an impact to ensure that this change does happen.
Absolutely.
We're heading for a short break, but stay with us. Perspectives will return in just a moment.
Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. It is now time to introduce our guests. First is Inibehe Effiong. Inibehe is principal counsel at Inibehe Effiong Law Chambers. He is also a human rights advocate who describes himself as an enemy of oppression and a strong advocate for human rights and justice. Very warm welcome to you today, Inibehe Effiong.
Thank you for having me. Enemy of oppressors.
Man of the people.
Thank you.
Anyway, our second guest is Donu Kogbara, a writer, broadcaster who has a weekly column in Vanguard newspaper. And she occasionally does radio, TV station commentaries and has worked for the BBC, Channel 4, Sunday Times, Daily Mail, Economist Intelligence Unit, and other well-known UK media organizations. She has also worked with various government bodies and the private sector. Welcome, Donu. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Ruth.
Okay.
I must say you look wonderful this morning.
Thank you. We're trying. Anyway, let's start with you first. Who are usually the most vulnerable target of violence during elections? How can the police further advance the remedies and suppress the mischief? And with performance and behavioral patterns, what would be your expectations in terms of security and safety of lives in each state during this electoral process?
Well, I mean, I'm extremely pessimistic about the chances of these three polls being peaceful and incident-free. I mean, there's somebody coming to see me from Lagos. He decided to come by road. He left Lagos last night, and he was supposed to enter Abuja this morning, but they were stopped at the border of Kogi State because the police are expecting trouble. So they don't want to complicate their lives by having any extra vehicles, passing through the state. So that's a big alarm bell already.
Absolutely. Welcome to Perspectives. Which governing body is responsible for enforcing the elections peace accord? And what actions are usually taken against candidates who are proven to have broken their agreements?
Okay, well, I think I personally have witnessed electoral violence on quite a few occasions. And, sometimes by both of the main parties, that's, of course, the PDP and the APC, at different points in time. If I may say so, the main problem is people who are not popular trying to force themselves on the Nigerian people. That is, candidates who are not popular. You see, Nigerian politicians are very lazy and very selfish. If you do a good job, you don't need to rig and you don't need to beat anybody up or force anything down anybody's throat.
Okay. Okay, Donu, let's go to...
Bring it to the studio.
The voice of the masses, opium of the masses. I mean, what other phrase can we use to
Man of justice.
call you? Anyway, speaking of violence, there's also the belief that governors also or candidates also incite people into violence. The recent one being the deputy governor of a particular candidate. Do you understand? That was saying to people that they should do whatever it takes, anything they can do to take it. I would have thought that with that kind of utterance, the security agencies should have taken action, maybe done sanctions against him or something to at least show that they will not allow for such utterances or such provocation during this electoral process.
Well, the mistake you have made, or the assumption you have made, is that the security agencies or the law enforcement agencies, in quotes, are necessarily interested in a peaceful election, because your question is proceeding from the background that the police, in particular, wants a rancor-free and peaceful election.
But are you saying that's not the case?
Certainly not.
Are you saying that the police prefer to have chaos?
The police is part of the chaos. Yes, because I mean, what is the issue? What is the argument? If you look at what the trajectory of our electoral process, right? Even what is going on in the field now in the 3 states, even what we witnessed during the campaign. In Kogi State, for example, a number of policemen were killed a few days ago in the course of a political rally. This is even a situation where policemen were victims of electoral violence. As I'm talking to you, I'm not aware that anyone has been arrested. So you have a situation where those who are supposed to protect voters, safeguard electoral materials, and guarantee the integrity of the electoral process, in many instances are also part of those that are sabotaging the process.
What you're saying is a hopeless exercise. Because I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that we can never have a free and fair election from what you're saying?
Well, I don't see how we can have a truly credible election
But don't you think
under the current arrangement. Under the current arrangement.
Yeah, but don't you think there'll be more scrutiny now? It's like before when it was 36 states. Now it's just 3 states that is going on. Don't you think there'll be more scrutiny?
No, because already, I don't mean to sound negative, but I mean, just go on social media. See what is happening in Kogi, see what is happening in Imo, and some parts of Bayelsa, right? I have seen videos where pre-filled result sheets, people are processing that result sheets are pre-filled before accreditation even starts.
For this particular
right, in fact, INEC has even issued a statement acknowledging that they are aware of those complaints. But the point I'm making is that you have policemen right there. In fact, one of them was busy, fiddling his phone. So you have policemen aiding the criminality. You have policemen who are supposed to arrest those that are committing this havoc. But in many instances, policemen are the ones who even aid talks to sabotage the electoral process.
Okay, so what do you now think is the best way forward?
I think it's for Nigerians to decide the kind of country they want to live in.
What would you suggest?
That is my suggestion. Because the law is there. If you look at Section 28 of the Electoral Act, right? Violence during elections is a criminal offense, punishment on conviction to imprisonment for either 3 years or fine of not less than $1 million. The question the media should ask the police is, in the last cycle of elections that we just concluded, the presidential and governorship and legislative elections, how many arrests were effected? How many people are standing trial for electoral violence? So what we see is what I would describe as the politicization of electoral violence, which simply means that when electoral violence is committed, people go to disrupt elections, people cut away electoral materials, people sabotage the process. It is just seen as politics. It's not seen as a crime.
INEC has a point to prove. I would have thought that now, that after the failure or the abysmal performance of the last elections, that INEC, at least Professor Mahmood, would want to justify and regain the confidence of the people.
He cannot give what he doesn't have.
So what's the essence?
Mahmood cannot give what.
Then?
Look, people, the Supreme Court has given judgment. I'm a lawyer. I respect the judgment of the Supreme Court. But when you have Mahmood, Professor Mahmood, who went everywhere, from Chatham House to media interviews, promising Nigerians that IREF was going to work, collected money for that purpose. At the end of the day, he didn't just fell on IREF, he fell on several things. No accountability. Internally, Nigerians have not been told what really happened to that election. And you now expect the same person to now give you credible election. This is simply impossible. Because this is an INEC where members of political parties are being appointed as resident electoral commissioners, where people that are overtly partisan are being asked to be referees in an electoral contest. We are just deceiving ourselves in this country. We cannot have credible elections under the current arrangement. That is my position.
Thank you, Inibehe. Let me bring in Mrs. Donu from Abuja for the next question. Many international publications stated that violence in Nigeria's 2023 elections was significantly lower than in previous elections. Do you agree with this? And what's your analytical viewpoint surrounding this?
Well, I wouldn't know comparatively whether violence was better or worse this year than it was in previous elections. All I know is that this time, in the past, I have personally witnessed a lot of violent incidents. And what your other guest said is so true. Even the police are sometimes victims of this violence. I mean, this country is so messed up. What the international organizations thought about this particular election, well, I can't verify or agree or confirm. All I can say is that I thought this last election was pretty bad. And I think all the elections I've ever witnessed have been pretty bad. I've been shot at myself. I have stood next to a policeman who was murdered in Port Harcourt, in Okrika. So I can tell you so many different incidents. And I think it's because the establishment is not seriously interested in stopping this nonsense.
Absolutely.
Okay, Donu. Political parties are always trading blames. Money also... Oh, sorry, you haven't finished? Sorry, you were going to say...
Can you hear me?
Yes, you were going to say something else. Go ahead,
I kind
please.
of feel as if the sound has been cut off.
No, we can hear you, Donu. We can hear you. So, Donu, can you hear us now? Okay, so we should go back to Inibehe.
Studio.
Okay, I wanted to ask you the role of NLC in this whole issue.
Yes.
Do you think NLC should be involved in politics? And then also there's the issue that they've gone on strike in Imo State, but Imo
Yes.
State has insisted that they will still go ahead with the elections. So what's your take? Do you think NLC should play any role?
The Supreme Court has ruled. The Supreme Court has ruled, right, in Balarebe, Musa and INEC, that civil servants have the right to express political opinion. The fact that one is working for the government doesn't, that is even at the government level, does not mean one cannot have political views. Why will NLC not have interest in politics? All across the globe, unions, labor unions, take it. In fact, in the US, as I'm talking to you, unions are endorsing candidates because they want political parties and candidates who will defend the interests of their members. But regarding what happened in Imo, if that is where the question is coming from, I think those who are accusing Joe Ajaero, you know, of what the governor said, that, oh, he's trying to influence the process, I think it's just, you know, not being honest about it. What is the issue? What is the issue? Why should you have the leader of the labor union of a country assaulted publicly, talks headed by the police, and no consequence, and you say, oh, he's coming to interfere in the election? NLC has the constitutional right, NLC has the moral right to take interest in who gets into public office in Nigeria. Because at the end of the day, civil servants and members of the union, those who are part of NLC, they will be affected by policies of government. So they have interest in the outcome of the electoral process.
But there are some who
I think it is just cheap blackmail. The question is, their interest in politics, is it just a partisan interest?
Exactly.
Or is it a policy interest?
Apart from that, are they sometimes somewhat biased?
No, I haven't seen evidence of that.
No, I mean there have been few insinuations here and there that they might be more in favor of a particular party and as such.
In what way? In what way?
Well,
in what way?
Politics is very complex.
If you have a government, right, where salaries are not paid, pension is not paid, gratuity is not paid, do you expect the union that is supposed to protect?
Then if that's the case, have a strike in all the states that are going. Why focus on one?
No, they are not. I don't think that is the issue. I think the issue is that before that incident, certain things had happened, and he has the right as the leader of the union to go to. I mean, why should Hobu Zodima even be asking why the NLC chairman is in Imo State? There's freedom of movement.
Not only that,
he's a Nigerian.
It was also manhandled.
It's clear constitutional right to freedom of movement.
Absolutely.
I don't think that kind of comment should even be tolerated. Why should he even question his right to be in Imo State? Because it's from there.
Citizen.
Is he not a Nigerian? When El-Rufai, former governor of Kaduna State, went to one of the southeast states, right, when they were in the position to monitor election, I think Anambra, if I'm not mistaken, and he was arrested by the SSS and confined to a hotel. He went to court to challenge that he had freedom of movement. That even though he's not from that state, he had the right to be there. The Court of Appeal ruled in his favor.
I remember that.
And even awarded compensation in his favor. So we cannot be saying, what is Joe Ajaero doing in Imo State?
We cannot.
Is he not a Nigerian?
No, but my point is that the strike in Imo State was due to lack of salaries not being paid, blah, 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 blah. Why didn't they have the same strike in Bayelsa and the other states?
Well,
we have to look at it individually. I don't know what the issue in Bayelsa is. I'm speaking about the Imo case. And whatever the argument is, nobody in this country should make excuse for the assault of a Nigerian.
I agree.
Look, yes,
I'm not justifying that.
Yes, I agree. But Joe Ajaero, yes, is a citizen. But he's the leader of the parents' labor union in the country.
But in that case, with this strike that he has introduced, won't that also affect voter turnout?
Well, I don't see how that will have effect, really. I don't see how that will affect voter turnout, by the way. Okay. Meanwhile, it was just, if I'm not mistaken, just yesterday that the police issued a statement that they are going to investigate the assault.
Yeah, they should.
Are we a serious country?
Thank you.
After a week, it took a week.
Are we expecting anything to come out of
It
that?
took the Inspector General of Police 1 week to say that the attack on the leader of the labor union in the country will be investigated. The federal government has not even reacted, if I'm not mistaken, to date. So what kind of country are we building? And why is this related to what is happening today? There has been an atmosphere of crime, of violence in Imo, right? The agitation and all that.
In all the 3 states.
Exactly, but in Imo in particular, a place like, Olu and several other places, you have been violence. So when you now have this kind of attack, what you are also sending a message to the voters. Because what you will see today, watch out, will be disenfranchisement. People will not be allowed to freely, in fact, I've seen a video in Imo State, where policemen prevented people from going to vote.
Wow.
I've seen a video and they're asking them for money. I just watched the video.
The police were asking
people for money before they can allow them to vote. So when you have this climate of violence.
You saw that video today?
Yes. In Kogi State, I have seen a video where thugs were caught with bundles of money in Ghana must go, and ammunitions by soldiers. At the end of the day, how many of them will be taken to court? What we have in this country is the canonization of crime. Where criminals are canonized, where people do all sorts of things on the day of election, at the end of the day, they are allowed to go. Because those who are sponsoring them, sadly for us as a country, are the same people that are supposed to checkmate them. So this is a hopeless situation for Nigeria. But I'm not going to say that something cannot be done.
Absolutely. Okay,
Nigerians must find way to hold their leaders accountable.
On that note, let's take this to Kogi State. What can you say on the strength of Natasha Apoti in how she was able to fight against the current powers that be in the state, despite how badly he did not want her there? She went through the process from start to finish, from the excavation period of the road where they tried to block her from getting into the polling booths. What can you speak on regarding
Natasha
her strength?
is someone I've had opportunity to meet her on one occasion. I think her story should be an inspiration to women in politics in Nigeria. I haven't seen many women in politics in Nigeria that have the sort of courage that she has. This is a woman who was shot at, a woman who was attacked, prevented from campaigning. But she stood tall to an emperor. She still went out. She persisted. So I commend her courage. And what that shows is that in the final analysis, it will take Nigerians to recover to reclaim their country. Natasha showed courage.
Every Nigerian.
Natasha showed courage. But don't forget that this is Natasha, what we are talking about. She also has influential people backing her. How many aspirants
So are you saying
have
that
that?
no aspirant, if you don't have a quote-unquote godfather or have somebody powerful behind you, your chances of even getting a word in will be very
When
slim.
the process is not fair, when INEC has lost the trust of many Nigerians, including myself,
The judiciary.
when the judiciary is a different thing. And this is the sad part of it. The reason why some of the reports we are getting now in Bayelsa, in Kogi and Imo, is because there is now a perception that, look, what are you going to court to do, unfortunately? So politicians are now believe strongly that whoever is declared on the field, that is the end of the matter. But that is not supposed to be so. There should be a judicial process for seeking redress, and people should believe that when you have a case and you activate that process, you get justice at the end of the day. But what we are seeing is that we are seeing several reports of violence. And why is this thing even possible? 3 states! Only 3 states! We are seeing this kind of reports, and INEC is just there.
But so what's the essence of this peace accord then?
Peace accord.
Is it just a paper that people just sign? Because in fact, 2 of the candidates in Imo State didn't sign the peace accords.
Of what use is the peace
accord? So really, what's the essence of this?
Of what use is
peace
it's not
accord?
enforceable.
It's not enforceable, so why even bother?
Of what use is the peace accord? I think it's just pretense. Politicians know that peace accord doesn't really mean anything.
In fact, almost nothing means anything, because I remember INEC too was also saying that they would because of violence, any polling booths that is violent, they will cancel the results, which of course even works for some candidates, because in a polling area where you're not that popular, all you need to do is just cause chaos.
For me, what is clear?
So what's the solution to that particular issue?
No, what is clear is that the solution is accountability, right? We need institutional accountability, because within INEC, I haven't seen any process that is capable of internalizing accountability. Electoral officials believe they can do whatever they want. I mean, look at the madness we saw in Adamawa, where somebody that is a rec, that had no power, was not a returning officer, was trying to determine the outcome of the elections. So we need Professor Mahmood to come publicly and explain to Nigerians why he's still in office.
Thank you.
Yes. Why should Mahmood remain in office? How can you have 3 states, elections in 3 states, and we are seeing this kind of widespread reports?
Why?
Yeah.
3 states?
Okay.
It is an embarrassment. It is simply unacceptable.
You certainly don't miss your words. So, Donu, is Donu here? Well, Donu, are you back? Are you back? Okay. Donu?
Yeah, I am just about hanging on the edge of the precipice.
Please, you know,
Yes.
this is what politics does. Anyway, I was going to ask, my last question was, political parties are always trading blames. Money also exchanges hands. Unfortunately, this also plays a role in how the votes will swing. But just because one party is more financially endowed than the other does not necessarily mean their candidate is the best choice. So with all the promises being made about free and fair election this time around, do you believe the results will truly reflect the will of the people?
Well, of course it doesn't. That's the problem with Nigeria, is people who are not popular inflicting their candidates on the populace. Decent people who maybe have worked at a grassroots level for years, doing good and useful things, don't stand a chance against the bullies from the, who have the money and the guns and the everything that it takes to force yourself down people's throats. I've really, honestly, my view of Nigerian politics has deteriorated sharply this year. I was a bit taken aback earlier when I was asked about whether this election was less violent than previous ones. Maybe because of where I come from, when in a part of the country where there's always a lot of controversy, that's, all these Niger Delta states. I can't honestly say that this year was any better than previous years. This election was better than previous elections. I blame the Nigerian establishment entirely. The INEC people do not do their jobs properly. And to be fair, INEC people are even at risk. I have relatives who work for INEC who told me that they were threatened and they could not do their jobs in the different places they were posted to. The police are under attack. They are both attackers and colluders with violent politicians and also victims. This country is totally messed up.
Okay.
I've missed a lot of your discussion because of,
sorry about that.
I haven't heard much of what you've said in this studio.
Okay, sorry about that.
But I've caught some of what the other guest said.
Okay.
And I agree with him.
Donu Kogbara, thank you for your feedback on that. War veterans have told of the heinous reality of warfare and the barbarism of their occupations. Most officers in Nigeria today are not aware of what they're getting into until after the fight, whereby they lose their lives, almost lose their lives, or witness lives being lost in the most barbaric ways. What do you want to say to Nigerians who are being recruited into such positions?
Sorry, can you repeat your question? I did not hear you well. Sorry.
What do you have to say to Nigerians who are being recruited into enforcement positions and not aware of what they're getting into?
Enforcement positions where?
Across the nation. So law enforcement officers, army officers.
Oh, law enforcement. Right. Okay. I understand. So what do you want me? What's the issue?
No, I think what she's trying to say is that what do you advise to people who want to get into politics, who want to earn or play political roles? What advice would you give them as individuals? Is it a terrain that is encouraging for anybody to want to go into, considering the obstacles?
Law enforcement aspect of politics.
So it's not.
I understand.
It's not.
Okay, I'm sorry if I
no, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the truth of the matter is that is that politics in this country does not favor the civilized. There are many, I can think of a large number of decent people who would do an excellent job as public officials who will not touch politics because of the violence, because of the law enforcement, the breakdown in law and order aspect. I mean, you did say earlier, Ruth, that you had a friend, and I think I know who you're talking about, who's doing so well in the private sector that you wonder why he should bother to expose himself to the dangers of politics. Well, I just hope that more decent people decide to take the gamble, even though I understand why people might want to avoid risk to their lives. This country really needs to be sorted out. And we all know that reform starts at the top. So when we're ready to encourage good people to enter politics and do well, the system will be streamlined and cleaned up.
Okay, that's true.
Do well.
Well, we hope that at some point the suppressed will now become the oppressors of the negative people. But anyway, in Inibehe, I want to ask you, as usual, most times when results come out, it might not favor some, it might favor others. Do you think this is, I mean, I've been told that the courts are, they are laden with so many suits and counter-suits and what have you. Do you see this being any different in terms of reaction of whoever loses? What? Do you see the typical going to court yet again?
From what I'm already, my assessments of gubernatorial election in these 3 states, I see the 3 states ending at the Supreme Court. I see this becoming another cycle of electoral litigation. I see people going to court after whatever INEC declared at the end of the day. But let me just quickly react to some of the things Obuzodimma said. He said, whatever God decides, please, that is blasphemy. God has no business with what is happening in Imo, what is happening in Gogi, what is happening in Bayelsa. The Nigerian God that politicians make reference to is not the God that you and I worship. When politicians speak about God, it is a God that they have created, right? It is not God that is going to buy votes. It is not God that is going to announce the results. It is not God that is sabotaging the process. It is not even God that sits at the Supreme Court or at the tribunal. It is not God that steals money that is meant to construct roads, to build hospitals, to construct schools. It is not God that determines the value of the naira. These are human actions. These are things that God has given us brain for us to determine. It is not God. God is not INEC. So God has no business with whatever is happening or is going to happen in Imo. The truth of my final words is that if we were still living in the era of law, Mosaic law of the Old Testament, most politicians in Nigeria would have been killed for blasphemy. God has no business with the politics that we are playing in this country. So let people stop invoking God, bringing God into, whatever madness is happening in our politics.
Thank you, sir.
And I call on INEC to prove a point that it is capable of self-redemption.
Amen.
I don't believe that it is capable, but let them prove us wrong that it is capable of. Let Professor Mahmoud prove to Nigerians that it's capable of self-redemption.
Well, let's hope that happens. An inch, no matter how bad it sounds, an inch is still better than a mile in the right direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Inibehe, for your usual vibrant and aggressive opinions, which we all treasure and savor because it's a good voice for justice. And Donu Kogbara, are you there? Thank you so much, even though you couldn't hear us half the time. Thank you for your input, my dear friend.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Much sooner.
Bye.
Thank you, Donu. Bye. Now, if a society normalizes indecencies, then indecencies will be the norm without countermeasures. If we elect the same corrupt politicians every time, then it's a message we are not prepared to change. As long as politicians keep legislating for their own interests only, the country cannot move forward. It's a shame that pillars in society have allowed deceptive politicians to corrupt and desensitize their hearts and minds to unethically fuel their greed. Therefore, the act of voting is one opportunity for us to remember that our whole way of life is predicated on the capacity of getting people who can take decisions carefully and move the nation forward. And as I always say, life continues and will always be a learning curve. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, Ruth Osime. Thank you. See you next week.
And with me, Olatorera Majekodunmi-Oniru. As violence for political power rages around the world, and as activists heighten their democratic work for liberation, may the world emerge into a neutral land of greater humanity, equal opportunities, and widespread progress. There's no hierarchical power after life, and there are greater threats to life, such as global warming, that regards no hierarchical power. We can all win. We can all win without violence. Thank you for watching Perspectives today. Thank you to our special guests. Have a great, great weekend. See you all soon. Goodbye.